simple or complicated. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, some in the middle, or something on the outskirts. I am not here to judge. Just throw your questions in the comments and we will get to answering them. I know politics can be really intimidating when you're first starting to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language. So just throw your questions in the comments and we will get to answering them. No fighting, no debating, no harassing, no bullying. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. My name is Jarrett Berenstein, and I'm here to answer all your questions about politics. So throw your questions in the chat, and we will get to answering them. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. This is not a fighty zone. This is not a debate zone. This is not a harassment and bullying zone. I know there's a lot of really popular shows out there where people just yell at each other and call each other names, but that is not what this show is. I'm not trying to own anybody or prove that I'm right and you're wrong. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. So throw your questions in the chat and we will get to answering them. Political Ape Minute says, dude, please search up Hernan Drago. I probably won't unless you send me a DM reminding me. Optimist says, what do you think about the Iran deal? I mean, is it still on? Is it really a deal? Like, the Iranians are saying that J.D. Vance is lying. J.D. Vance and Trump are both regular liars, so, you know, the strait's closed, the strait's open, we're still at war, we're threatening them. Like, what the fuck is going on, man? You know, it makes absolutely zero sense. This is what happens when you put children in charge of foreign policy. Okay, let's see here. Own the blank, insert whatever offends everyone today. I don't know what that means. Megalodon Corp says, Israel kept attacking Lebanon, that's what happened. I mean, okay, use the power of the American government to get Israel to stop doing that, or separate yourself from Israel in a way where your deal has nothing to do with the actions of a nation that you don't control. Like there's ways around this, guys. Kat says, CIA or FBI, which has more influence or power? Oh, I've got no idea. Probably the CIA, but they're very secretive, so how can we even know? Maddie says, what do you think about the current situation between Europe and the United States? It's bad. It's bad. The American government, for the first time in a really long time, has decided that Europe is its enemy. And so I don't understand why. I don't understand why they think that. I don't understand what the value is of doing that. There doesn't appear to be any accuracy there, like that they're one of our strongest allies in having, you know, democratic, non-authoritarian governments, you know, like, yeah, man, it's fucking bananas. Ebby Gay says, may we see your earlobes? Is that like a sex thing? What's going on there? You need to prove that I'm not AI or something? What's that about? Okay, user a bunch of numbers says, is open borders okay? I could be convinced that they are, but I don't think they are right now. Scott Kammerer says, do you remember Napster? I sure do. 1161 says, what do you think of the Finnish blue and black movement? I don't know anything about it. Fred Eric says, thoughts on the concessions we got from Cuba. Did we get any concessions from Cuba? I don't think we did. I think we basically just told Russia and Iran that they were allowed to sell their oil to Cuba. So just like more shit for Russia and Iran. Dan Turner says, opinion on Big Donald's hair. As always, looks terrible. Lady Lynn says, expectation about birthright citizenship. What would scouts rule? I'm not really sure what that means. What would scouts rule? Oh, SCOTUS. That's probably what you meant. SCOTUS. My guess, and remember, political predictions are completely useless, you know. But if you're curious what I think is going to happen, I think what's going to happen is that is going to be like one of the few decisions that goes against Trump, and so but they're going to package it in with a whole bunch of pro-Trump decisions or pro-Republican Party decisions, and so there will be less for Trump to be mad about, and also the mainstream media will look at the birthright citizenship case and be like, oh my god, thank goodness they're so objective and have no party affiliation or loyalty. They're just calling balls and strikes. That's for darn sure, which is obviously bullshit. All right, Fred Eric says, foreign capitalists no longer have to form joint ventures with state firms to operate in Cuba. That is news to me, Fred Eric. I got to give that a Google. I don't know if that's accurate or not. Dave in Texas says, okay, why were the Whigs called the Whig Party? I don't remember. Chili Jimenez found out. She says, "Have you ever been to a Democrat rally before?" God, I don't think I have. I've done a lot of, marching and I've done a lot of door knocking. I don't think I've been to a rally though. I don't think I ever went to like a Harris rally or anything like that, or a Bernie rally. Scott Cameron says Unit Sites is in a Napster versus record industry situation. We are the record labels. That's an interesting metaphor. I don't know if I'm putting those pieces together though. Alessi says, "What is the best politics? Left-wing politics." Lady Lynn says, "I surely wish good things to good people." So do I, Lady Lynn. Glad to hear that we are on the same page there. Will says, basically, Starmer resigns, so a northern lad, Burnham, is taking power, joining the EU. I don't know what Starmer resigning has to do with the EU, but I'm glad that Starmer's out, because it really does seem as though he was not doing the Labour Party any favors. All right, Scargam says left-wing politics is ruining Europe. LMAO. I don't think that that's accurate at all. I don't think that left-wing politics is ruining any country. All right, Scott Kammerer says you can fight Napster and lose or buy in, which is what happened with YouTube years later. I guess I kind of see what that analogy is. Rugal says, "Do you think 9/11 happened?" I mean, I was in New York on 9/11, so yeah, I can tell you pretty definitively that it did happen. Terrence asks, "How's the baby?" Baby's doing great. Getting bigger every day. Makes me smile every day. Alessi says, "Where are the other people chatting?" Oh, I'm multi-streaming, Alessi. I multi-stream on TikTok, Twitch, and YouTube. Stella says, "Trump or Kamala?" What a weird question in the year of 2026. The Fixer Mike says, "If Antifa wanted to ruin the reflecting pool, wouldn't they dye water red? Isn't MAGA weird?" I mean, I don't know how many people in the MAGA movement actually believe that vandals are the ones that fucked up the reflecting pool. I think it's like a game to them, like Trump says something that's obviously false, and they all agree with it, because the fun of being in the MAGA movement is you get to pick what your own reality is, and anybody who disagrees with you is a cuck, So yeah, I'm extremely skeptical that there are actual people out there who believe that that is really what happened to the reflecting pool. All right, what's up, Lady Lisa? Let's see here. Plant Daddy Mix says, "Can we put the administration on the next season of Outlast, but just leave them on Epstein's Island?" That's pretty funny. Okay. Somebody whose name I can't read says, "Our message is not sent" or something. I don't know. Brandon Spano says, "I'm not a Trump guy, but I immediately knew all issues with the pool were libs sabotaging it. LOL." Brandon, I wonder if you're being real, because you put the LOL at the end. It makes it sound like you're just doing a bit. Lady Lynn says, "Who do you think has a better chance from the Dems in 2028? I've got absolutely no idea. I don't know who's running. Yeah, and who can win? I think there are a lot of really good Democrats that could win in 2028, both the primary and the general. Lady Lisa, thank you so much for helping me reach my first gift goal of the day. Will says, "Burnham is giving us a Senate ops ? Also, Burnham is from the North. We've never had a Northern PM. I mean, I guess it's cool that you've never had a Northern PM, and now you do. Cool things, cool new changes." Media Watchdog says, "Good ? Democrats?" I mean, what's your question? Media. Treeman says, "Do you think men should be able to compete in women's sports?" I really don't give a shit. I don't care who competes in what league. How about, instead of separating them by sexes, we separate them by ability, and that way everybody is just competing with the people that are closest to them. But I really don't give a shit. Like, I feel like this is an issue that affects like 12 people, Okay, Silent says, "Does it really matter when both sides are owned by the same people?" So both sides are not owned by the same people, Silent. I'm happy to go into more detail on that. But if you're looking for which political party is owned by the billionaires, it's the Republicans. And if you're looking for which political party does the work of the 99% of the working class, of the unions, of everybody else, except for the wealthy, that is the Democratic Party. Optimus says, "Is there a non-biased news organization?" So I would say that there's two different kinds of news organizations. There's news organizations that try to be non-biased, but end up succumbing to a normal human bias. And then there are news organizations that don't care about being biased. They're biased on purpose. And what you have there is like right-wing news channels like Breitbart and Fox and One American News, and shit like that. That's why study after study has shown that right-wing news is the least accurate of all the news that you can check out. But if you're really trying to avoid any kind of bias, so you'd obviously want to avoid right-wing news sources, but also you want to have a variety of news sources to try to outweigh any kind of bias that an individual source is giving. Eric's opinion on declining birth rates. It's interesting. I would assume that the reason why birth rates were declining was because everybody's staring down the barrel of an existential climate disaster and also an affordability crisis. Like, do we really feel like we are creating the environment in which people can afford to have kids if nobody can afford healthcare or a house or food or a car or higher education for their child once they reach that age? So, but here's the thing, like if you look at the data, if you look at the history of population growth and decline, there's not like a hard and fast, when things are good, people have kids, and when things are hard, they don't have kids. It's a little bit more complicated than that. It does feel to me like population is declining because the billionaire class has made shit so hard that people can't really afford to have children. Schlitz says, thoughts on Zionism. I guess I would ask you to define Zionism, because some people think that Zionism means that Israel has the right to take over the entire Middle East, and some people think that Zionism just means that the people who are currently living in Israel should be allowed to stay and shouldn't be ethnically cleansed out of that area. Okay, Dimitri says, you didn't even answer the question, you just mentioned right-wing media. No, I definitely answered the question, Dimitri. Would you like me to repeat the answer? Because I'll happily go over the bullet points with you. Tiffany Hoare says, Israel has the right to exist. Okay, if you say so. I mean, I think that every nation that currently exists has the right to exist. I don't think that Israel is special in that way. Rook says, why Dems and not third party? There's no third party that has the infrastructure to win nationally. There's no third party that even has the infrastructure to win, largely on the state and local level. Like, if you look at the state and local level, you still see domination largely by the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, with a couple of outliers here and there, like when the Tea Party got big and the Democratic Socialists are doing really good right now. But even those people tend to caucus with the Democrats, so I kind of include them in the Democrats, Okay, Shillett says national self-determination for Jews in the region is how you define Zionism. Self-determination for Jews in the region. I mean, I guess I don't like how vague that is, because I guess you could argue that when a citizen of Israel kicks a Palestinian out of their house and then the IDF murders those people so that the Israeli gets their house, like could that be just national self-determination for Jews in the region? Shillett. I guess the point that I'm trying to make in either defending or not defending Zionism is to say that it is true that the government of Israel is a bad actor, and it is true that they are oppressing the people of Palestine. But it is also true that the people living in Israel are under threat because of anti-Semitism and, and also because of the actions of their own government and shit like that, So, like, are we in agreement here? Like, is there some daylight between your thinking and my thinking on this? Like, I'm curious. CS says, what's the benefit of an independent caucusing with a political party? I mean, if you don't, then you have no ability to actually get things done. You know what I mean? Like if every elected Democratic Socialist did not caucus with the Democrats, then they would get exactly 1 or 2 votes for whatever issue, Okay. Schiller says, I find it strange to fold, let's say, IDF or settler policies or actions of the Israeli government into Zionism. I feel it functions as delegitimization of a very basic concept. No, what I'm saying, Shillit, is that people are yelling at each other and saying that Zionism is this and Zionism is that. Like, I am not going to be in support of Zionism if Zionism is, what's the word I'm looking for? Rationalizing the worst actions of the Israeli government and some of the citizenry. But so what is it that you want me to say? Because I'm not going to say that I either support or don't support Zionism, because I don't know how people are defining it. Like, do we agree that the government of Israel is doing war crimes? Do we agree on that? Do we agree that if you If you're living in a house, that nobody should kick you out of your house, whether you're a Palestinian or Israeli. All right, D, good to see you again. Will says, do you support Burnham's Manchesterization? Don't know anything about that. MX says, who do you support? Democrats up and on the ballot. Zell says, opinion on AIPAC. I'm against AIPAC, but I'm also against other extremely well-funded right-wing lobbying organizations like the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society. Patrick Dick says, did you support when Joe Biden pardoned his son on federal tax charges? No. I do not care for the presidential pardon. I think it has been abused too much, especially by Joe Biden, especially by Donald Trump. So, yeah, just get rid of the whole fucking thing. I'm not going to defend. I mean, it kind of makes sense because the Republican Party has been, using Hunter Biden as a scapegoat for all of their shitty policies. They've been trying to ignore all of the good that the Democratic Party has done by pointing at Joe Biden's only living son, who is admittedly like a train wreck. It doesn't seem like a good guy, but yeah, it makes sense to me. Like, oh, you're gonna do vindictive prosecutions on my son? All right, I guess I'll pardon him. Again, I don't think you should have done it. Okay, Lady Lisa says, we need to get money out of politics. Too many of them are bought and paid for. Completely agree. But if you're trying to get the money out of politics, you got to vote for the Democratic Party, because the Democratic platform is to get money out of politics, and the Republican platform has been putting more money into politics because they recognize that they have more access to billionaire cash and ill-gotten cash, so they want to make it easier for there to be lobbying and bribery and corruption and stuff like that. That's the reason why we're looking at the most corrupt administration in human history is a Republican one. All right, Jack Farrell says, which British party do you support? I don't really support any British party because I'm not a citizen. But I would say that never vote Reform, never vote Restored, never vote for the Tories. Zell says, opinion on Trump attacking Iran on behalf of Israel. I mean, the war that Trump started in Iran is one of the most incompetent, self-owns, expensive in money, energy, and human life. Like, there was no point to it. The only thing that happened is we hurt us and we helped Iran. Like, Iran now has more money and power than they've had in decades. So yeah, nothing nice to say about that at all. End the war today, please. But then also you have to be cool with us making fun of how bad the deal was that you struck to end the war. But end the war. Like, end the war now. Kiting Addict and Triska, thank you so much for helping me reach my second gift goal of the day. Dark Comedy says, do you believe it was 250K girls in Britain? I do not believe that. There's always these like fake stories of like children who were taken or whatever by immigrants whenever there's like a right-wing party that's trying to blame immigrants for things. So I don't buy it. It might be based in some kind of truth, but I just don't buy that is accurate at all. Alrighty, let's see here. Ink says, what's your opinion on the EU? I'm for it. Rue says, who are your favorite U.S. presidents? I don't really like talking about presidents from before I was alive because I'm not like a history major, but I would say that Biden and Obama were the two greatest presidents of my lifetime. Let's see here. Zell says, how would you feel if Israel kept interfering in the deal between U.S. and Iran? I mean, why does it matter? Why is it that we are so intimately associated with Israel that Israel attacking Lebanon? I think it's Lebanon. Is going to interrupt an anti-war deal between Iran and America. Like, that doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's fucking bananas, man. Okay, Optimus says, do you blame the left for anything? Oh, yeah, there's a lot of... the left has made many mistakes, but the problem is that the mistakes of the Republican Party are so massive that they completely outweigh the mistakes of the left. Like, even the really big mistakes, like Biden continuing to send money and weapons to Israel even after it had been concluded that they were guilty of war crimes. Like, Trump is doing that plus more. He's doing that like times 3. So it's like, I can't get mad at the Democratic Party for doing that because the Republican Party is doing that times 10, like, make it make sense, I'm still going to vote for him. Good Lord. Millsy says, what do you think of Keir Starmer resigning? Probably a good idea. Prue says, hey, remember me? I'm that anarchist. Wanted to ask your opinion on Nestor Mako if you have one. Don't know who that is. And I don't remember you, Prue. So sorry. It's nothing personal. Okay, let's see here. Will says, Manchesterization is moving power up north away from London. I have zero opinion about that, Will. Montana 2 Rice says, will Maxwell be pardoned? Ooh, that is a really good question. It is one of those like third rail questions where it's like Trump will if he thinks he can get away with it, because what he wants is for Maxwell to be indebted to him so that she never says a thing about him that could be incriminating at all. But he does still understand that there are political realities to doing something that brazen, and whether or not he believes he can get away with it is an open question. Like, I would not think that Trump would think that he could get away with just destroying the entire fucking East Wing of the White House, but there he fucking went, you know? I did not think that Trump could get away with accepting $400 million bribe from Qatar, or, you know, selling political pardons or building concentration camps, you know, but he, you know, is writing an executive order to try to undo birthright citizenship, you know, like, but there he goes, you know. What is up, Lauren? Great to see you again. Nova says Senate predictions. I think Democrats will probably take it, but I think that we should all do the work to try to make that happen instead of just hoping and praying. David G says, what is your thoughts about imperialism and why do you think it's bad? I mean, I think imperialism is bad because I guess it would be, you know, us invading other lands, you know, and putting our culture and our lifestyle upon them doesn't seem like the move to me, you know. Okay. John Abbott says, thoughts on Trump spending this weekend at Camp David when he repeatedly said he hates it there. I mean, some people have hypothesized that he was there because of some like medical issues, and while I think that is entirely possible, he still seems to be alive and kicking, you know, for better or for worse. Okay, Turek says, will Netanyahu get away with the war crimes he made? I mean, that's up to the citizens of Israel. You know, if they vote him out of power, then he is going to jail. He's going to jail for corruption. I don't think that the ICC has any authority to put him in jail for the crimes that he, you know, that he has been doing internationally. But, you know, at the very least, he will not be able to leave Israel ever. Otherwise, you know, he would be arrested by the ICC potentially. Queen says, are you MAGA? No. Will says, why do y'all vote for so long? Just do a random Thursday like us, guys. I guess we're like a way bigger nation, Will, so it takes us longer to vote. Oceanaholic says, do you think the housing market will crash? I'm kind of expecting there to be like a big general market crash, not just the housing market. I'm stunned that it hasn't happened already. I am 100% not qualified to give anybody kind of like financial advice or stock market tips or anything like that. But that's just from somebody who reads the news. That is what appears to be the thing that is going to be happening soon. Max, as your father says, is abortion a good thing or no? I mean, I don't think it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it is a medical procedure. You know, it's like, is chemo a good thing or a bad thing? You know, it gets rid of your cancer, but the side effects fucking suck, you know. For even women that want to get abortions and are very happy with their abortions, it still sucks to get an abortion depending on what kind you get. But yeah, it should be legal because women die when abortion is not legal. Will says, what happened to the midterms? They're ongoing. Kevin Marquez says, USA winning the World Cup? I got no idea. Gosh says, what are the chances Trump actually goes to prison for anything? You know, if you could guarantee me that Trump lives for another 10 years, I would say he's most likely going to prison. But I think the thing that is most likely going to happen is that he dies before he goes to prison. But he should be in prison. He deserves to be in prison. I just don't know if they'll be able to get him in prison fast enough before his body craps out. Okay. Max is your father says, are you MAGA? No. Meme Pirate says, hi, what do you think of Nick Matau? I don't know who Nick Matau is. Turek says, why Trump keeps changing everything he says? Because he's a liar. So when you catch liars in lies, then they have to start lying again in order to get out of the last lie that they said. I mean, it's also a little bit of like, if I say everything, then nobody can be mad at me. You know, if I say that I'm for taxing the rich, but also I'm saying I'm going to cut taxes for the rich, you know, that way the rich people will like me and the poor people will like me. Hopefully they just don't check. Hopefully the poor people just don't check. And then that's kind of, you know, that's kind of what happens, you know, over the last 20 years. Okay, Javi says, what do you think about monarchy in European countries like Spain? I mean, if you guys want to have like your cute little figurehead monarchists still, like, I guess that's fine. I wouldn't like that. I wouldn't like my tax dollars going to just some random ass fucking family. Let's see here. B says Charlie Kirk Trump. That's not a question. Patrick Dick says, do you want to pay 50% in tax because that the model in Sweden and Norway? I would not mind paying 50% in taxes, but I want something from that money, Patrick Dick. Like, I want there to be universal health care and potentially universal basic income and potentially free public college and subsidized housing and shit like that. I want the government to use my money to make sure that there's no people living on the street, to make sure that companies aren't polluting the air and the water and the food and the medicines. I want to make sure that there's oversight so that I can be confident that that the water coming out of my faucet is safe to drink. Okay, Ghost Waff says, what do you think about libertarian? Libertarianism is a political philosophy that was astroturfed by the billionaire class. The reason why they created libertarianism is because they want there to be no laws that take away any of their money. So they want to get rid of taxes so they can be wealthier, and they want to get rid of laws so that they can do whatever kind of shady shit that they want and have there be no legal consequences to it. Like, if they decide to use an old pipe that ends up exploding and killing a bunch of teenagers, they want there to be no legal consequences for that. And depending on how libertarian you can make the government, they might be able to get away with that shit forever. Okay, if anybody's wondering where I got that specific example from, read the book Dark Money by Jane Mayer. Regulars have to take a shot. Star says, how about Myanmar? I know almost nothing about Myanmar. Max is your father says, are you a liberal? Some people would describe me that way. I describe myself as a progressive Democrat, which I believe is more of a leftist political position. Okay, Meme Pirate says, why is Lebanon's strike at Israel tolerated by the left, but only Israel's response triggers them? I don't know that the left is cool with any strikes that are happening, whether it's Lebanon at Israel or Israel at Lebanon. I think that where the left is concerned, we generally tend to side with the less powerful. The people that did not instigate the fighting are the ones that we generally tend to side with because we think it's really unjust for a very powerful nation like Israel to start a war against Lebanon, a less powerful nation, and then to just basically say, like, hey, both of you guys stop it, as though they're equally responsible for the fighting even happening. But I don't think anybody is like cool with Lebanon killing people that live in Israel. Okay, Quo says, have you tried Barnyard Takachi? I don't know what that is. Patrick Dick says, is there something good Trump did? I mean, I could probably make an argument for that, but why would I? Like, if somebody's stabbing me in the throat, do I have to admit that they have nice eyes? Like, if somebody's doing so much wrong, why do I have to fucking sift through the pile of shit that is everything they've ever done for the one piece of silver lining? It seems like centrism for centrism's sake to have to say that. Ghost Waff says, what do you think about France? I like France. I don't know anything about the government, but I've always liked the French. Meme Pirate says, so the weaker is right, ? And it's unjust only if the stronger is stabbed. No, Meme Pirate. If somebody is the weaker party, they're not always in the right, but, it seems clear that Lebanon was not going to start a war with Israel, but Israel started a war with Lebanon. So, okay, Sword says, who is better, J.D. Vance or Kamala? Kamala. Every Democrat is better than J.D. Vance. Okay, Vanity Versace says, sir, what about this Republican bill for ankle monitors for pregnant women? Is this real? So I have not heard about this like on the federal level. It's possible, like there's some really crazy shit that happens at the state and local level. It's possible that that's a real thing. This is the first time hearing about it. This was loosely in Project 2025, where they were talking about how they would need to monitor pregnant women to make sure that they weren't getting sneaky abortions in other states or other countries. And this is obviously like psychotic, and people were trying to point that out as if to say, don't vote for Trump because then there'll be fucking ankle monitors on pregnant women. Nobody gave a shit about that for some reason. But yeah, whether or not that's like a federal bill, I've got no idea. I wouldn't put it past them, but it does seem a little it seems a little egregious for the time period that we were in. It's like the Republicans aren't getting more popular by the second, so I'm a little skeptical about that. But I would have to give it a little Google. Okay, sources. J.D. Vance said that they never wanted the Iranians. The Iranians felt disappointed. I don't know what that means, Sword. All right, Topadoro. I have no opinions about phalangism. MC says, what you think? In my opinion, I see Iran as Eastern Israel. I don't think that that's a good analogy. I don't think that either governments are good, but I don't know if I would, if that's the strongest connection I could make. Patrick Dick says Biden wouldn't have won in 2020 if not for COVID. Potentially, but it's also possible that Biden wouldn't have won the primary if it wasn't for COVID. We could just sit here and talk about hypotheticals all day, Patrick Dick. Mattis Ledette says, what is political materialism or political idealism? So I'm not 100% sure. I guess it depends on who's defining it. To me, materialism is like the opposite of idealism, where in idealism, you do something because it's the right thing to do, even if it ends up making your job harder or going against your platform. So, for example, the Democratic Party kind of forced Al Franken to resign at a time when we really needed Democratic senators. So we had like one more Democratic. We had a deficit of a Democratic senator, but we thought it was the right thing to do to force him to resign because we wanted to have the moral high ground on women's issues against Trump. So I think that's probably a good example of the difference between those two philosophies. Vanity and Triska, thank you so much for helping me reach my third gift goal of the day. That means that it is time for Finger Hearts. It is Finger Hearts o'clock. Best part of every day. All right, Mutter says, did the Russians write Elders of Zion entirely? I don't remember who wrote the Elders of Zion. I don't know if it was the Russians. But I just know that it is anti-Semitic crap. Jordan says, thoughts on Trump? Worst president, most corrupt president, most incompetent president. He has within him racism and misogyny and anti-Semitism and homophobia, and he's trying to be a dictator. So yeah, no good things to say about that guy. Gabriel says, do you believe that Gavin Newsom's capitulation to the center will cost Democrats 28? No, I do not. But it's possible that it costs him the primary win. There is an ongoing debate on whether the smart move for the Democratic Party is to be further to the left or further to the center. And, sometimes you just pick your lane because there's nobody else there. And sometimes you think it's the smart strategy. I don't think Gavin Newsom is actually as centrist as he is appearing to be, but he is also still too centrist in reality for somebody like me to support in the primary. But he's definitely better than every fucking Yahoo the Republican Party is going to try to put up. Okay, let's see here. John Evans says, do you think all the stories of World Cup tourists in the U.S. will have any lasting positive impact on how the world views us right now? Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, one of the beautiful things about the World Cup is it is just this moment to just be like, remember, we are all just people. We are all just nations of people. And while our governments do some really fucking stupid shit sometime, we are just all trying to live our lives and love our families and eat great food and watch great sports and make art and see art. And yeah, I don't know if it's going to be enough, but it definitely will last for a while, Okay. Me and Pirate says, what would a realistic response to drones and rocket strikes be? Example, Hezbollah striking Israel. So because Israel is the more powerful nation, it is my opinion that they need to do the work to establish peace. What Israel has been doing for a long time is every time somebody throws a rock at them, they start shooting fucking rockets and they send tanks and they start annexing territory, like very outsized reaction to being attacked. I think they need to do more work towards peace. And I don't know what that looks like. It's definitely not sacrificing human lives, obviously. I'm not trying to advocate for that or anything, but they need to do something to basically say, we want there to be peace. We want there to be no fighting between us. And maybe they focus exclusively on, their own defense as opposed to doing anything, aggressively, what's the word I'm looking for? Offensive. Okay, the Fixer Mike says, I don't think the 1936 Olympics agree with your host, Jay. I mean, things ended up okay eventually. Okay. Maddie Ken says, leaving Lebanon would be a start, right? Absolutely it would. The Deep says, what is your political ideology and why? I'm a progressive Democrat because progressive Democrats do good for the 99%. Okay, let's see here. John Abbott says, working towards peace is not forever. Tear one of our mothers sheds, thousands of their mothers must weep. Yes. I'm pretty sure I agree with that, John Abbott. Okay, The Deep says, all right, did that one. Yurms says, how will the Russia-Ukraine situation fizzle out? I've got no idea. We've been seeing mixed signals from the Putin regime. We have been watching him try to expand this war, but also he's starting to feel the consequences of the war. Like the Russian economy is suffering and he's becoming less popular. He's getting old. And so does he really have the time and the strength to go to war with all of NATO right now? If I was going to bet anything, and remember, political predictions are worthless, I would say that this war is winding down because it is finally reaching the people of Russia, and the people of Russia are pissed about it, and Putin is scared of losing power. But again, I've got no fucking idea. Nobody does. The Deep says, what do you think of universal free healthcare? I'm for it. But we shouldn't call it free healthcare because then people who are against universal healthcare will point out that it's not free, that we pay for it in taxes, as though that's like some big gotcha. And then we have to then clarify, like, yes, but it's still cheaper than paying insurance companies, but they think they caught us in a lie, Bob says, I'd say, what do you think of communist ideology? If communism is the workers owning the means of production, then I'm for it. If communism is the government telling me which jobs I'm allowed to do, then I'm not for it. Opposed, Chimera says, not political, but no gender has it harder than the other. Both deal with the same emotions. I got to disagree with you there, opposed Chimera. Like, I think that there are very real physical dangers to being a woman that men do not experience. I can't tell you how many times I waited tables for 12 years and, I would take the subway home no matter what time it was. And pretty much every woman that I worked for had to like either go in a party or take a cab, which is like a lot more expensive. So yeah, if you just look at like how many male presidents versus female presidents, how many male CEOs versus female CEOs, how many male deans of colleges versus female deans of colleges, like there is clearly a more difficulty in being a woman than being a man. Okay, Envy says, do you think Hezbollah is a terrorist organization? I mean, that's not for me to decide. It seems clear that they are. If you as an organization or nation are fine with punishing citizens for the actions of a government, then you are technically a terrorist. But I would also include Netanyahu in that. Okay, let's see here. Maddie Ken says, think the Red Scare 50s made almost all Americans think socialism is a horrible thing? Yeah, 100%. The billionaire class recognized that was going to be an issue. That when people recognize that there's more of us than there are of them, it's that fucking Bugs Life meme. It's like those insects outnumber us 1,000 to 1, shit like that. And so they had to create this idea of, the Red Scare. Communism bad, socialism bad, etc. Okay, 1161 says, opinion on National Socialism. I believe that is what the Nazi party was called, right? So I'm not for that. Okay, Meme Pirate says, what do you think of the grooming gangs investigated by Rupert Lowe he released? I don't know anything about that. Let's see here. Scrolling up. William says, do you like the Jews? What a weird-ass question. I like the Jews as much as I like the Christians and the Buddhists and the Muslims, and I don't care what religion you are. You can be whatever religion you want. That's the whole fucking point of America. Okay, Radar says, who owns the Federal Reserve Bank? I don't think anybody does. I believe that it is a independent organization. Okay, John Abbott says, it was a quote from a social media post by Israel's national security minister. He basically declared, one of ours, all of yours, about Lebanon. Yeah, that's not de-escalating, so I'm not for that. Alrighty, let's get back into these TikTok questions. Michael Crawford said Hamas and Hezbollah are resistance fighters. I don't think that you get to call yourself resistance fighter if you are doing collective punishment on citizens. That's some terrorist organization shit. The Deep says, do you think Che Guevara was a bad person? I've got absolutely no idea. I have not done any research into the kind of person that Che Guevara was. Michael Crawford says, I don't care what you think. It's not what I think. I'm talking about definitions, my guy. Okay, Meme Pirate says, are you interested in UK politics? Not particularly. Okay, Slug says, if I hate Jews but like communism, what does that make me? Can we not, Slug? Like, don't say shit like that. Like, what the hell's the matter with you, man? Like, yeah, that's just a bad comment. Be better in the future, Slug, okay? The Fixer Mike says, I gotta disagree. Best religion, can't think of anything problematic with the Sikhs. Yeah, the Sikhs are dope as hell. Okay, you're okay, Slug. I appreciate you apologizing. Graham says, are you all green voters? I do not believe that everybody in here is the same political ideology. The Master Debater says, Democrat or Republican? I'm a Democrat. Maddie Kent says, hope the racism in chat stops. Me too. Michael Crawford says, Hezbollah defending Lebanon against the Zionist invaders. That's resistance. Michael Crawford, I am not at all interested in hearing your take about how terrorist organizations that kill innocent civilians are just defending their sovereignty. So unless you ask a question, I am going to boot you out of here. T-Glove says, who would you vote for in the UK? I can't tell you who I would vote for. I can only tell you who I would not vote for. I would not vote Reform. I would not vote Restore. I would not vote for the Tories. All right, Dad of Boy says, UK government want votes for 16-year-olds. Do you think it's a good idea? I am not dogmatic about lowering the voting age. I understand the argument for it. Like, the government is making decisions that are going to affect the lives of 16-year-olds. They're going to be out of high school soon, and they are either going to go into college, or they're going to, join the workforce, or try to start a business, or whatever. They should get a say to what their government looks like by the time that they are an adult. I think that we have to weigh that with how emotionally responsible are you at 16 versus 18. Like, I do think there's a big difference between a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old. So, yeah, I'm not going to die on that mountain. I'm open to arguments for and against. But yeah, short version, I think that everybody should vote. I'm a big voting rights guy. I think that if we had higher voter participation, that the country would be better. And what better way to do that than to get people used to voting when they are younger? Gaza, the GOAT, says, thoughts on Nigel Farage? Bad guy. Do not vote for. Do not support. The Deep says, who was in the wrong in 2008? Georgia or Russia? I don't know anything about that. MRT says, what do you think of communism? If communism is workers only the means of production, then I'm for it. If communism is the government telling me what jobs I am allowed to do, then I am not for it. Okay, Joseph says, thoughts on the Welsh Senate election results? No idea. Hunter says, best South Park character? No idea. Lady Lisa says, it is possible that blue states start withholding federal funds. Yes, but there's some argument about that having limited effectiveness. Josh says, do you think they should teach in school about LGBTQ or talk about it in school? So 2 things about that, Josh. There is this narrative that any school that is teaching about the existence of people who are LGBTQ are somehow like endorsing that lifestyle or are pressuring children into being a part of that lifestyle. Now, I don't think that that's what that means. I don't think that's actually happening. If it is happening, I'm not really for that. I don't think we should be pressuring kids to be straight or gay. We should just let them know that these different ideologies and sexualities exist, and then they can find out whichever one matches them themselves. But I think it would be a bad idea to act like the LGBTQIA community does not exist. It's a bad idea because then there's like this secret thing that the kids are going to go discover on their own. But also, like, let's say that you are, somebody who is in the LGBTQIA community, and you just feel so lost. You see everybody acting and behaving a certain way, and it just doesn't make any sense to you Think about how refreshing and illuminating it would be like to discover that you are not alone, that there are other people out there who are like you, that you're not weird, that you're not wrong or bad. That is what I believe letting children know about the existence of those communities in school. That is what I believe the benefit of it is. Okay, Mr. Dip says, what do you think of the Democratic Party is way, way better than the Republican Party. Democratic politicians are better than Republican politicians. The Democratic platform is better than the Republican platform. The history of the Democratic Party over the past 50 years, they've had way more successful governance than the Republican Party. So, yeah, Democrats are better. Okay, August says, is super far right or super far left worse? Super far right is worse. Super far left is like everybody should be able to afford healthcare. And super far right is like we should throw Jews in the fire. Okay, the Deep says, look at your hair, bro. Is there something wrong with it? I think it's dope as hell, man. Looking so fresh and so fucking clean, my guy. Okay, Scott Clower says, thoughts on the still breathing aspect of Mitch McConnell. I don't know, man. I don't know. There are so many times that I have looked at these fucking crypt keepers in the government, and then they like have a fall or they have a stroke on camera, and I'm like, that person is not long for this world, and then they live for like 5 or 10 more years. So yeah, I don't know. Like, if you asked me to guess, I would have thought that both him and Trump would have passed away already of natural causes. You know, as much as eating 20 cheeseburgers a day can be natural causes. But yeah, man, yeah, I got no fucking idea. It would not surprise me if they were hiding the fact that he had died because they did not want a Democrat appointing that seat. Okay, Mr. Dilp says, but Democrat is more in right than real left, like in Europe. I disagree with that. The Democratic Party is a big tent, so we have people that are a little bit more centrist, but we also have the people that are the far left of the American government, like AOC and Bernie Sanders. Okay, Michael Anthony says, do you think we'll ever get age/term limits in policies? If we vote for politicians that say that they're going to do that, then 100%, yeah. Okay, Declan Blue says, wrong with my hair? I have no idea. Kaplan says, is the UN useful at all? It can be. The American government has kind of been devaluing the UN for a long time, and so it is a lot less powerful and useful than it could be, but it has been very useful in the past. Stefan says, Jew politica. Let's not say things like that, Stefan, or I'll have to boot you. Tegelov says, the USA is more right-wing than UK in terms of political spectrum. Obama would be a UK conservative. I disagree with that, Tegelov. I think it is a lot more complicated than that. If you want me to go into more detail, let me know. Okay, Slug says, do you think Dems back in office will keep supporting Zionism? I guess it depends on what you mean. You know, like, I do not believe that the Democratic Party is going to continue supporting the Netanyahu government. I do not believe that they're going to continue sending them money and weapons. If you are looking for the politicians that are voting against sending more money and weapons to Israel, they are all Democrats. Like, 100% of them are all elected Democrats. So, yeah. Yeah, but, you know, it's a very complicated issue in a very complicated area. So, I'm going to say this. I can't say 100% what's going to happen in the future, but I can guarantee you that the Republican Party will continuing support for Netanyahu and his regime. And if there's a chance that the Democrats won't, that should be enough just to vote for the Democrats, to get rid of the Republicans who are definitely going to continue supporting Netanyahu. Thank you, Pliff. Thank you, Alessi. Alessi says, doesn't seem that complicated, to be frank. You know, Alessi, philosophically, I agree with you, but in politics, shit gets weird. So I think that we assume it is simple to our detriment. When we assume that it's simple, then people can convince us that the people that we should be voting for, we should not be voting for. Okay, Yassine says, what do you think about the King of Morocco? No opinions about the King of Morocco. Graham says, we are Charlie Kirk. I am not. Ben Herbert says, do you think that Western society is too decadent and impatient to ever return to true liberality? No, I do think that we have a weird obsession with wealth and luxury in America and the accumulation of wealth, and I do think that that is toxic, and we should not do that. Like, let's try to affect culture in that way. All right, Graham Seeth says, "Why not, Jarrett?" Well, Charlie Kirk was a bad guy. I don't think he should have got assassinated. I'm against all violence, including political assassinations. But yeah, no, he was a liar. He was a con artist. He was toxic for the culture. You know, absolutely no love lost there. Tink and Triska, thank you so much for helping me reach my first Finger Hearts goal of the day. Okay, the Deep says, will you support an Orthodox monarchy in the caucus? I don't know what that means. Meme Pirate says, when has Charlie lied? I mean, I can bring up the list if you would like, Meme Pirate. I'm happy to. I've done it before. I'll do it again. Josh says, who comes first, illegal immigrants or the American people? So let's say, let's put a hypothetical out there, Josh. Let's say that we only have 5 hospital visits available, and we've got 5 American citizens and 5 undocumented immigrants that can have those hospital visits. If I'm an American citizen and my tax dollars are paying for that hospital, then I feel like I should be the one getting the first treatment. Like, I'm the one who should be getting one of those 5 spots. But what we need to remember is that that's a very short-term plan, because if people who are undocumented and are in America cannot go to see a doctor, then they are potentially a vector for disease. It is so much better for us to make these programs available to everybody is here. It will protect us more to make it available to everybody than just to make it available to us. But yeah, I get it. Like, I get being pissed off if my tax dollars are paying for something and somebody is getting it before me. Like, that would annoy me 100%. But we need to be looking forward towards a world where everybody gets it. Otherwise, shit just gets bad. Okay, Hamza says, Israel or Palestine? I am for the citizens of both of those countries. I am against the governments of both of those countries. Okay, let's see here. Alessi says, they also end up at the hospital anyway and get life-saving emergency treatment. It would be nice if they could get preventative care. 100%, Alessi. 100%. Jay Ship says, what's your thought on reducing police precedent in traffic citations using robots instead? I am a little worried about robots making mistakes and being unaccountable. I mean, are they going to make more mistakes than the current police departments? Are black people safer being pulled over by a robot than a racist white cop? I mean, I see a real value case there. I see how this could go real well for a lot of people. But yeah, I think that we 100% need to regulate the shit out of any kind of automaton in an authority position. All right, Adem says, explain socialism. Socialism is when we all pay taxes, and then we use those taxes to pay for something that helps everybody. So paved roads is socialism, and public school is socialism, and the military is socialism, and the fire department is socialism. Oh, thank you, Declan Blue. That's very sweet. Please stop spamming, though. Mateo Hold says, I'm from Lebanon. What do you think about the war now? I mean, it's infuriating to watch the Netanyahu government start wars with all their neighbors. It is, yeah, Declan, please stop. It's annoying. Yeah, I don't know what else I can say about it. I just don't think that, I don't think Israel should be invading you, you know? Okay, let's see here. Joey says, LMAO, taxes aren't socialism. You can have an imperialist state with high taxes. Yeah, but there was more to that definition than just the taxes, Joey. You know how I said then we spend that money on things that help everybody. That's what the socialism part is, you know. If I said that a cake is made of flour, eggs, and milk and sugar, would you then go, eggs isn't cake? That's basically what you did. Okay, Chicano Batman says, can Newsom beat Vance? Oh yeah, 100%. All right, everybody, we are almost at an hour, so get your final questions in. What is up, some funny guy on TikTok? Okay, let's see here. Scrolling up, scrolling up, scrolling up, scrolling up, scrolling up, scrolling up. Timmy Tim says, I'm Team Robocop. Yeah, that didn't go. There were no issues in that movie, you know? Okay, let's see here. Drew McKay says, be careful, don't take your mask off all the way. What a weird thing to say. I don't know what that means. Okay, scrolling up, scrolling up. Declan Blue says, do you support trans rights? Yes. Poor Declan Blue got blocked by being annoying. Slug says, I want socialism so bad, bruh, even if communism brings it. I mean, I don't. We could have all three. For economic systems, you can have capitalism and communism and socialism all existing together. That already exists in many countries, including America. We just have a little bit too much unregulated crony capitalism here, and not enough socialism and not enough communism. Lady Lisa says, do you think this country will ever recover from Trump's second term? 100%, if good people like you and me do the work, Lady Lisa. If we just sit on our hands and hope for the best, then I cannot guarantee that we will get out of this. Okay, Davik says, what do you think about fascism? I'm against it. Okay, let's see here. Scrolling up, scrolling up. Some funny guy on TikTok says, thoughts on the DSA wave? I'm happy about it. I am hoping that there are more Democratic voters and Democratic politicians who see the success of the far left political candidates and then decide to help them instead of fighting against them. There's a good faith argument for a centrist Democrat standing on the neck of somebody like Mamdani because they believe that it would be worse for Democrats running in like Alabama or some shit like that. But every time a Mamdani wins and becomes like really popular, that kind of destroys that narrative. And so it allows us to kind of filter out all these other politicians and be like, it doesn't really seem like you're doing this in good faith anymore. It seems like you're just trying to protect your own power and your own influence. In which case, we will replace you in the primary with a fucking DSA Democrat instead. Dad of Boys says, what do you think of the quote, American elections are too important to be left to Americans? I mean, not about it. Who else? Shamil says, did you study politics in college? A little, it wasn't my major. Royo says, why presidents do wars if they could just do one-on-one on Fortnite? I mean, I would much rather that be the case. Okay. All right. Lauren asks, will we ever be able to claw back the money the Trumps have stolen, or is that money gone for good? I think there is the potential for some recompense, but it does not happen easily, I do not think. The Trump family have been grifting for a really long time. We have never been able to fully extract back all of the resources, all of their ill-gotten gains. But, it depends on how much work people do. If people do the work, potentially we could get it. Potentially we could get every cent. Loothead says, how can I get rid of a 70-kilogram decomposing chicken? No idea. Hell Good says, why will an independent never be elected? Because we don't have ranked choice voting in America. Data Boy says, what other elections have such global impact? I mean, lots of elections. The election of Netanyahu, the election of Trump, the election of Xi Jinping. Those have all had massive global impact. Okay, chat says, did Obama steal any money? No, Obama did not steal any money. And no, it's not just Republicans who steal money, but mostly Republicans steal money. And it is the Republican political platform that Republicans should be able to steal money. And I can go into more detail about that if you like. Chad. All right, everybody. If you want to support the show financially, you can. You can send gifts on TikTok. You can send bits on Twitch. You can be a super fan on TikTok. You can be a subscriber on Twitch. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to my Twitch channel for free. Cost you zero, helps me out a ton. There is also a Patreon that you can join for as little as $1 a month. Dad of Boy says, best political film or TV show? West Wing is the answer, by the way. No, Veep. Veep every fucking day, Dad of Boys. Veep to death, man. All right, where was I? If there are any questions that I was not able to get to on this live stream, please reach out to me. Do not be shy. Email me, hit me up via DM. I want to be a resource for you to be more involved and informed about politics. You can also join my Discord. Link is in the bio. There's a great community of people there. And there's also recommendations for books and podcasts and civic actions that we should all be taking. Now, here's the thing. We only get out of this awful moment in history that we were in if all of us do the work. And if you don't know what kind of work to do, then you can go over to my Discord. There's a whole fucking thread called The Work. It's just all shit that you can do to be a part of the solution, to be a part of trying to solve what is currently, all the fuckery that is currently happening right now. So there's no excuse. And if you're thinking like, I don't have time or I don't have money or something, I can't do a whole shit ton. Just do a little bit. If we all do just a little bit, then nobody has to do a lot. Okay, gonna go ahead and block this person here because I'm being annoyed by them. Data Boy says The Thick of It by the same creators as Veep. Far swearier. I haven't seen the original version. Michael Anthony says, what are your preferred news sources outlets? I like aggregators. So I check out Ground News and I check out the Reddit news feed. Chad says, why do Republicans always push Obama's net worth growth before and after office? I don't know what Obama's net worth was before and after. I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation for it. I think that if the Republican Party had some shit at Obama, then they would have used it because they have been fucking trying to get that guy for anything, for wearing a tan suit, for eating grape upon mustard. Like, yeah, man, it's, yeah, that's boy, oh boy, oh boy, guacamole, guacamole, guacamole. Data Boy says, I teach 10-year-olds. Several of them tell me why immigrants are bad and why reform are good. That is a real fucking bummer, Data Boys. I hope that you are able to, dissuade them of that false ideology. All right, anything interesting going on over here? John Abbott said, if Obama had stolen so much as a penny, we'd still be hearing about it from Fox News every week. That is 100% accurate. All right, everybody, do the work. Be good to each other. You don't have to be a dick to do the work. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. I will see you guys tomorrow. Same bad time, same bad channel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Goodbye. 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 Goodbye.